all of us in this industry, growers, food companies, the input companies, the huge corporates that we all know, the agtech companies, we all have a role or a job in solving these problems. With all due respect, the broker in New York will not solve it.
On today's episode of United We Ag, I'm joined by Hovav Lapidot of Manna Irrigation. Based out of Israel, Hovav gives us a little bit of the rich history of the Jordan Valley as it pertains to over 6,000 years of irrigation, as well as a deep dive into the creative solutions offered by Manna. We're also joined by world-renowned agrometeorologist Guy Ash from Pessl Instruments. Manna and Pessl have teamed up to increase their customer experience and deliver quality irrigation management solutions. Guy, Hovav, and I will spend a little time talking about this partnership, as well as the importance of becoming better managers of our most precious resource, water, in light of an ever-changing environment. First things first, this program is brought to you by Metos USA. Metos USA is a holistic IoT company with tools for smart agriculture. With a full lineup of weather stations, telemetry units, crop cameras, bug traps, and over 400 unique sensor configurations, Metos USA has the right solution for any farming operation or golf course. In addition, Metos USA offers a broad range of predictive modeling solutions for tracking the potential for disease pressure, animal stress, and even work planning tools for applying fertilizer and chemicals. To learn more, follow @Metos USA on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or visit our website at metosusa.com. That's METOSUSA.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of United We Ag. I am Derek Browsdy, your host. One of the most important technological advances through history when it comes to agriculture has been the discovery, implementation, and then continuing improvement in irrigation. Irrigation allows us to take otherwise arid environments and turn them into booming agricultural powerhouses. The early evidence of this dates nearly 6,000 years ago back to the Jordan Valley in the Middle East. My guest today, Hovav Lapidot, has been dubbed kind of the creative guy at Manna Irrigation, an Israeli-based tech company where he's worked since the company began to help growers understand new innovative ways to manage irrigation decisions. In addition, our friend Guy Ash from Pessl Instruments will be joining us again to discuss the origins of irrigation in the Middle East, what technology has done for us, and the challenges we still face ahead. Guy, Hovav, thank you for joining the show today. Welcome.
Hello, Derek.
Hi, Derek. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
How's everybody doing today?
We're all good.
Well, yeah, hanging in here.
I know we're kind of smack dab in the middle of harvest in Nebraska right now, so it's one of those. Soybeans happen so fast. Traditionally we're harvesting until close to Thanksgiving. And, which is 2 months from now. And we got done with soybeans real early. Dad got things switched over. We started on corn. Everything is just moving so fast. I would imagine in maybe 2 weeks or so, we'll be kind of wrapping up harvest. And a lot of people it's just, everything is progressing so unbelievably quick that it's been definitely a weird year. And it's kind of funny, we were talking about irrigation today because not every year in eastern Nebraska do we need to run pivots as much as we did this year. It was really, really dry. We didn't get any measurable rain from like June 10th, I believe, from June 10th on. And then sometime in the early September, we got a little bit of rainstorm. But for the most part, the crop was already turning and ready to harvest. So it was definitely an increased need irrigation year this year. So I don't know, what are you guys seeing? Guy up in Canada, and Hovav, you're based out of what city in Israel are you based out of?
It's just right out of Haifa in the northern third of the country.
Okay, cool.
In a valley called the Jezreel Valley. It's a very productive, in terms of agriculture, productive valley. There's a lot of ag, a lot of ag is going on here in the Jezreel Valley. So that's where I live and work.
Good.
Beautiful
Awesome.
place.
Guy, how about you up in Winnipeg?
We're pretty much through our harvest now. We're actually into fall field work, and a lot of the anhydrous is being put on for fall fertility. We had a pretty good year because we live off of soil moisture. We have supplemental, we have usually good precipitation here where I'm located to give good yields. So irrigation is more in the vegetable crops, the fruit industry, those type of things. So I would say we had a pretty good harvest. It was fairly dry, good conditions, and good yields because of good soil moisture.
Awesome. Well, it's always good when when all this regions around, when everybody has a good harvest. It just makes for a lot more fun global conversations. Is what I found on our conference calls. So for anybody that's listening, we're doing the show a little bit different today because what we're here to do is we're here to talk a little bit about irrigation. Hovav, we're going to talk about the kind of some origins of irrigation and some innovation that it seems like Israel has been on the cutting edge of irrigation technology and advancement since ancient times. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what he does with Manna Irrigation and some of the technological advances that are available for growers to use. And we brought Guy in as well because there's some cohabitation going on between Manna Irrigation and Pessl Instruments to offer just a better customer-facing experience, a lot better of a decision-making tool. So we're also doing it's not technically a live stream, but we've got a video version. So if you're wanting to follow along and you're wanting to see, we're going to have some on-screen demos. I would say hop over to the YouTube channel where we'll have this video. You can see all of us. You can see the live demonstration that we're going to do and some images. So with that, Hovav, I'm going to turn it over to you. So my first question is, tell me a little bit about Manna Irrigation.
Sure. So Manna Irrigation was established actually in 2016, 4.5 years ago, as a subsidiary of Rivulis Irrigation. Rivulis Irrigation is one of the global leaders today in drip and micro irrigation solutions. And the vision back then was to make irrigation decisions simple and accessible to every grower everywhere in the world. We wanted to make the irrigation dilemma, and I think we're going to talk about this problem or dilemma in more details in a second, but we wanted to kind of make this irrigation dilemma of how much and when to irrigate a problem of the past. It's not a problem anymore. And to make it simple enough and accessible enough so everyone in the world can use it. So we've developed a software solution that takes all this complexity of the irrigation decision into account and provides the growers, the users of this application, with actionable, simple to use, very accurate water recommendations. Sure, the benefit for them, for growers, is I think quite clear. Is to maybe check one thing off of their list, right? Growers have a very long to-do list or to decide list, and we wanted to take one off of their list and get optimal water use efficiency, meaning the optimal use of water.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so many different checklists that growers, so many different hats that growers have to wear throughout the year. And if you're fortunate enough to have irrigation on your farm, just being able to make that decision easier. I'm looking through some of these pictures, and so a lot of your website interface looks very simple to use. Looks like there's some pretty stunning information for growers to kind of thumb through, and we'll get into some of that as well.
Sure.
But so these images, or this tool is based off of satellite imagery, correct?
Sure. Yes. part of the way of doing it simple and accessible everywhere in the world meant to us using remote sensing. And the best technology to use in order to do that, to achieve that, is satellite imagery. So we analyze satellite imagery, weather data, agronomy models, and also a lot of information from the field itself in order to make a very informed decision.
Great. So we're gonna actually get to see you go ahead and throw in a live field. And when we were kind of planning this, I wanted to have a field here in Nebraska that we could maybe look at, but unfortunately we're not in irrigation mode right now. A lot of our fields are getting cut. So before we hop into that, and I had kind of touched on it on the intro, but doing some research for this episode, it's kind of astonishing, and there's a lot of historical importance to when it comes to irrigation from that Jordan Valley and that Israel area. It seems like from the very inception, Israel has been, or your location, your geographic region has been paramount in not only the development of irrigation, but its continued advances throughout the years. So what can you tell us about irrigation in Israel? I mean, it seems like you're the beginning and still continue to be the cutting edge.
Yeah. Actually, I think the earliest man-made irrigation evidence is dated, as you said, about 6,000 BC. Maybe it's more than 8,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt. These are the early civilizations, and they developed huge and they developed around huge sources of fresh water, the Nile and in Egypt, and the Tigris and Euphrates in what's today Iraq and in Syria. They did understand the importance of water for crops and started to build those amazing structures of canals and dams and basins in order to draw water from the rivers and provide them with the first, what we can call, agricultural fields. And then, the impact of being able to irrigate and to develop crops was amazing. That was the fuel for these early empires. This is what created them as empires.
It's funny. I love listening to history shows and I listen to history books, like if I'm out in the field and a lot of podcasts and whatnot. And I think it's the Sumerians from that area really early on, where it was kind of the first true powerhouse. And this implementation of irrigation and being able to kind of harness the power of nature. I mean, while it could essentially cause, because they had a system of canals essentially, and you get a heavy flood year or heavy rain year, and you're talking just massive floods. Now that they're controlled floods that are really close to population centers, so they could be truly devastating in some aspects, but at the same time, it allowed these people to, like you say, establish these early empires that are, still echoing throughout history, and we're still learning about just some of the fascinating things that they were doing. And without that, I mean, the agricultural landscape of the area, I mean, who knows what it would look like?
Yeah. Well, the entire mankind history could have, be different.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to make light of the ancient times, but I mean, I think even newer developments in irrigation currently, or I mean, not currently, but in our less recent or more recent past have also kind of stemmed from your region. So what can you tell me about drip irrigation?
Yeah, sure. But even before that, we have in Israel, and as you mentioned, in the Jordan Valley, in some places around the Dead Sea, which is, it's the lowest place on earth. It's surrounded by desert, but there are evidence for agricultural and irrigation structures there from biblical times. So we get closer to Israel, and then so Israel today is considered to be one of maybe the most advanced countries in the world in the use of technology to optimize use of water, not only in agriculture, by the way. Consider that most of the country is defined as desert. Rain and groundwater are not nearly sufficient. And on the other hand, Israel, for its unique situation in the neighborhood, we have to be food independent. We have to grow as much food as we can in-house. So, like in many different things in history, from challenge and constraint comes in innovation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And many good ideas and good technologies were invented because of a need, a stress.
Yeah.
So take, as you mentioned, drip irrigation, for example. I don't know if everybody knows that, but it was invented in Israel in the 60s. There are nice stories about how it was either discovered or invented, right? These things are always close to one another. And many other technologies like seawater desalination, wastewater treatment, and many more. So back to agriculture. Israel today, about 50% or maybe 46% of the agricultural land is irrigated, compared to I think maybe 20% in the world. So much bigger proportion of the land is irrigated. By the way, we spoke about how wet was the summer in the Midwest in Canada. In Israel, it's much simpler. There's simply no rain at all during the summer. If you don't irrigate, there's nothing. So it makes life easier in a way, but much harder in other ways. So 46% of the agricultural land is irrigated, and what's more interesting is that about 80%, if I'm not mistaken, but it's somewhere there, of the irrigated land is irrigated by drip or micro irrigation technology, compared to maybe 5-6% in the world. So the penetration or the usage of precision irrigation, low volume irrigation, drip and micro sprinklers or micro irrigation is almost, that it is the dominant way of using water for ag. And that's very unique for Israel, I think, today.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to being as efficient as possible, and anymore you're seeing more and more. I would say probably more and more growers on a global level having this understanding and knowing, like in my area in particular. So there are areas, Nebraska, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nebraska, within the United States, but we're kind of a unique state in that we sit on top of a very large underground aquifer. So a lot of our water is groundwater. It comes up from the aquifer. The farther west you get, there are restrictions on how many acre inches that growers can use per year, and we haven't seen them in my area yet. But and that's not to say that they aren't coming. But one thing that managing it like there is a restriction helps everybody, and it ensures that not only do you have a good crop this year, but there is availability for water and you're sustainable in the long run. So, not to jump kind of back to talk a little bit about your area there in Israel, but I am curious. You'd mentioned that a lot of the food that a lot of the supplies for the country are grown in-house or grown locally. So that to me tells me that Israel's just a kind of a very diverse agricultural powerhouse with a whole bunch of different crops that are grown. I mean, what are some of the more important? What are the biggest crops in your area, or what all are you growing throughout Israel?
So in terms of if we compare import to export of food, we export much more fresh vegetables and fruit than what we import. There are some new regulations about that we in ag in Israel we don't really like, but the fresh produce is mainly local grown. Okay, in terms of meat, we will export. There's some things that cannot be grown here or cannot be grown well enough or massively enough. So there will be import. But if we go back to ag, so all the grains, Israel is known for citrus, avocados, now almonds, crops, fresh vegetables of all kinds. What else? Cotton. Cotton is less and less. Yeah. The Israeli cotton is very fine and high quality. So we don't grow like huge masses and we cannot compete on mass, but on quality we definitely can. So Israeli cotton is also very good.
Cotton is and Guy, you might know more about this than I, but cotton is kind of a hot climate crop anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the southern U.S. You find it, high water demand, lots of irrigation on it. Same here. Again, Middle East cotton's known for its fine, good quality characteristics. I'm not making fun of the cotton in southern U.S. at all, Derek, but I don't think it competes with what's over there.
Really interesting. No, that's fascinating. That you'd think because I think when you think of larger crops like corn, soybeans, wheat, there's a standard that's probably fairly similar wherever you're growing it in the world as far as quality goes. But the fact that there could be that different grades in something like cotton, it's truly interesting, I think.
I think the other thing that is maybe unique in Israel is the use of land. So in most farms in Israel will do dual crop. So winter time will be the grains, rain-fed grains crops, and then during the summer, same land will have summer crops, corn, tomatoes, the cotton, sunflowers, and things like that, irrigated fully. So there's a lot of action in every farm year round.
Yeah. Our environment is completely different, right? We have such a small percentage of our crops irrigated because we have precipitation. We're rain fed. So where I live, it'd be just a couple percent. And we're so blessed that we have so much runoff in the spring from snow melt and streams that we can actually store water. We probably have enough water that flows through our lakes to the oceans to the north that we could supply a good chunk of the northern U.S. with water for irrigation, honestly. And we have one thing, a huge aquifer like Derek speaks about in Manitoba, because Manitoba was where glacial Lake Agassiz was when the glaciers melted. So there's an awful lot of stored water below. So there really isn't a limitation on it, but it's all about the timing of the weather and how dry it gets and when you need to tap into it, right? It's there, but you really need to be able to manage the problem based on the timing of what's occurring on your crop in our environment. So we call it supplemental irrigation. We wouldn't use it as full out irrigation just because of our environment we have. So it's interesting, same problems, just different in magnitude of what we have here from there.
Oh, absolutely. And that, I have to say, that's probably one of the funnest things about having these discussions is to, see, us three are in drastically different landscapes throughout the world. But we're all there's tools out there that can help us all come to the same conclusion or help us make the same decision. And, at the end of the day, we might farm half a world away from each other, but we still share the same problems. And going into some of those tools and solutions, Hovav, if you don't mind, I might turn it over to you, because I'm interested in this Manna Irrigation Platform.
Sure.
And maybe if you are willing, we'll throw up your screen and you can give us kind of a live walkthrough demo of it and just explain some of the features as you're doing it. Does that sound all right?
Sure. Yeah, I do want to say, maybe, continue what Guy just mentioned about timing. So that's exactly the point. The irrigation scheduling. Why is it so important? Whether you have rain or irrigation or both, the scheduling, the how much and when to provide water is crucial for the yield production. Maybe it's the most crucial, important factor. We all know that under irrigation, the plants will not be or will be stressed and will not develop well enough to produce the yield potential. But over irrigation or too much water is not good either. It might damage the roots. It washes the nutrients down and away from the root zone. Develops all kinds of fungi and diseases, and at the end of the day, it costs you more on energy and water in places where you pay for water. So that's exactly what we're trying to do, to find this sneaky optimum schedule that will get you to the perfect yield per water ratio or water use efficiency.
I have a customer in down in cotton country in Arkansas, and he uses the term crop per drop.
Yeah.
So they've got customers that are competing in crop per drop contests to see who can have the highest yield with the most water efficient usage. So
up where I am, wet feet, we call it, right? We have this problem of wet feet. The crop sits in water, too much soil moisture, right? And it causes all kinds of secondary things, as we're talking about here. The disease issues. It can stunt overall development. It cools the soil. So your part of the world, you can control the environment a lot more, because you don't have to worry about that over wet part a lot of the time. So you can control the right amount of soil moisture is a fantastic thing to be able to do for a crop, to make sure that you're giving it the right amount of water to produce the right amount of yield. However, we got to have water in an aquifer, a supply to do that, right? Which is the precious commodity. Whereas up here, I'm blessed with too much water. And I'd say, if I talk to my growers, they would say, I have too much water. My feet are too wet. And that's actually stunting the overall yield. And, you're leaching nutrients through the soil or into waterways. Anyhow.
Exactly, yeah. But you know what, Guy? Even in places where you don't have, that much of free water from the sky, I would dare to guess that most of the world irrigates too much.
Really? Okay.
Because unless you do deficit irrigation, you mentioned the cotton in southern US, most of them deficit irrigation, but overall, because growers don't really know exactly how much, they'll give a little bit of extra.
Yeah, true.
It's definitely an inexact science for a lot of guys that aren't utilizing technology, and I always kind of make the joke that, the best way to know when to turn your pivot on for a lot of guys is, well, my neighbor turned his on. and you don't know if that neighbor just turned his on because the neighbor on the other side turned it on, and if he turned it on because the neighbor on the other side, and hopefully somewhere down the line somebody has a tool that's telling them when to be efficient. But if not, it's neighbor turned it on, I might as well turn mine on too.
It actually started down in Texas and then went all the way up.
Oh, we can blame Derek for that, turning our pivots on up here.
Yeah.
So, but how do you know? So, if you think about it, the irrigation problem is like the classic mathematical problem of a water pool, right? Or you need to make sure that there is enough water in it, not too much, but enough water in it, or actually in the pool around the root zone. Now, one way to do it is very common. is to use devices or sensors and try to measure the water content in the soil. Okay, that's or in the pool. If you could measure how much water there's in the pool, that's what you would do. Another way is to measure how much water goes in and how much water goes out. So that's how you know at any given time how much water there's in your pool.
Mm-hmm.
For the second method, inputs are relatively easy: rain and irrigation. This is the water in, but the tricky part is the output, how much water the field uses or the plants use. Okay, measure how much water the plants in the entire field use was or has been a problem until now. That's what we actually do. Before I even jump into the software itself, I wanted to explain a little bit behind what's under the hood. So it sounds a little bit like magic. We measure actual crop water usage based on the crop conditions as observed in satellite images. Okay, in fact, it's not magic. It's based on the very well-known and well-approved evapotranspiration paradigm that can estimate how much water the plants will use based on the crop conditions, the vegetation, and the weather conditions. Only we make it much more of a measurement rather than an estimation. Okay. The software obviously is much more comprehensive and takes into account many other factors like the weather, and we're going to talk about the weather in a second in more details regarding this partnership, the agronomy, the phenology of the crop. But the bottom line is that once you set up a field in the software, it will start giving you exact irrigation recommendations that are very specific to your own field, the entire field, and even every section of the field on a daily basis. And that's, I think, what makes it friendly or valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you're ready, let's go ahead and see a live version of this.
Sure. So I hope you see my screen. Let me know.
Yep.
Let me hide this one. Manna is a cloud-based software, so it means you can access it either on your laptop or desktop using any internet browser, or your mobile app, or or your smartphone using a mobile app. You just need to set up your account. It's a service or a subscription like Netflix for that matter. Okay. And you set up your fields and farms into the account, and then the system starts working for you. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough without getting too much into too much details, but this is the farm page. Derek, as you mentioned, we looked for irrigating fields in the Midwest, but it's almost over. So I'm going to use an example from Mexico.
Maybe we can swing back and do this again next June when I really need to see this and on one of my fields.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you can. By the way, you can do it. You can do it yourself. You can sign up. You get a free trial period, and you can set it up yourself and see what it does for you.
Excellent.
So this is the farm page. In this case, we're showing 2 blocks of this crop. You get the weather conditions for today. And speaking about weather, this is the first touch point where Manna and Metos or Pessl Instruments come together. I'll just show how we connect the two platforms, and then we'll move on with the functionality in Manna. But the point is that Manna was designed to work without the need for specific hardware in the field. However, equipment like the Metos weather stations and other sensors make it much more accurate, and also help the growers to kind of leverage and get more functionality out of their investment in this equipment, the past investment or maybe future investment in the Pessl in the Metos infrastructure. So if I go here,
kind of ties in with your hyper-local weather strategy guy.
Yeah, I mean, you need the local weather station to drive the local evapotranspiration that goes into the entire field, which does by the satellite imagery we're going to talk about here. So you need to have local data for a number of different applications as discussed: disease management, right, spraying, workforce planning, and of course, where water is very important, irrigation scheduling.
Yeah, so this, I mean, it's a really interesting and a really, I think, relevant tie-in, because you're not just doing a 1 point in a field type of a calculation. You've got visibility and eyes on the entire field with that hyper-local weather. It's beautiful when things can work together in conjunction, and both products seem to work better because of it.
Yeah, I like how I'm very interested to learn how you tie the satellite imagery, across the field. Now you can see the water use across the field. You can have an ETO value for a field, but now you've got, okay, let's see, based on the resolution of the imagery, what's occurring across the field. It's a real water balance on the entire field is what you're talking about.
Exactly, and based on every pixel of the field. So if you think of it as like having a sensor every 30 feet or every 10 meters, you have a sensor. And that makes it a very, high resolution evapotranspiration measurement.
Very powerful tool.
Yeah, so let's see how it looks like. So this is just a kind of the way how to connect the two. You see the manufacturer here is Pessl. What you need to do is insert public key and private keys that you can get from the field climate platform. And if you don't remember how to do it, or you don't know how to, there's an easy guide here on how to get those keys. You put them in here, you click save, and now the weather source for this field will be taken from the nearest Metos station that is connected to the field climate platform. Very powerful, as Guy said, in terms of getting the right data, the right evapotranspiration and rain data for this field. So let's see how we use this data. I'll just click on this field, and we're going to get to the irrigation scheduling page. And again, I remind you, this is all available in your smartphone using a mobile app. If there's only one important thing in this screen, it will be this, the next irrigation. So again, the most important, and maybe the only thing important here, is this. Next irrigation is on Friday. Today's, what is today? Monday. When we record this, and this is a live system, a live field, okay? So the dates and amounts are real. So it tells me in 4 days you need to irrigate 0.72 inches. I have two different zones here. This is a field irrigated by drip infrastructure. So there are actually two valves irrigating, or two sectors irrigating this field. So I can set Manna to provide a specific irrigation schedule for every valve. If I want to see more, I'll just expand this. And this is where it gets interesting. And Guy, to your point, I'm going to try and explain how we use satellite imagery together with the weather to calculate the evapotranspiration. But even before that, you see the full schedule for this field or for this zone. It irrigated yesterday, next time is Friday, then Monday, and you have 14 days out plan. I can easily change irrigation dates if I want, and rain events will appear here. Remember, we spoke about the inputs and the outputs. So the inputs are shown here, irrigation and rain, and then the output is the evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is actually a simple formula of the reference ET. As you mentioned, Guy, is a daily evapotranspiration. It's a meteorological parameter that can be taken from the weather station or a weather service. But then you have to have the crop factor, because evapotranspiration in a certain location and day will influence corn differently than almonds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the crop factor, and this is what Manna measures using the satellite imagery. We measure the density of vegetation. If we go back to plant physiology, very simply, the more leaves, the more vegetation you have, the more water use, or the more water the plants will transpire, right?
I call that ground cover. If ground cover is 100%,
Exactly.
100% leaves, you're losing water at a potential rate, the highest rate.
Exactly.
Unless it's not supplied with water, right? It could be in wilting.
Exactly right. So in the literature, in the FAO 56, they call it crop coefficient, or KC. And what you see here in this little pop-up is the conditions on October 8th for this specific field. This would be the temperatures. The daily ET would be 0.18, and you have the crop factor or crop cover calculated by the satellite model to be 0.91, 98, almost 1. And protocol is a little less. Protocol is just a fixed maybe manual based on some research done many years ago. And then that's how the system calculates the outcome of water. The bars show the soil water content. So we know how much in, how much out. This would be the soil water content, and you can manage it.
So you do it as a percent of capacity, eh? That's interesting. Like 100% is a full coffee cup, 69% full coffee cup kind of thing. That's good.
Yeah, the 100% will be the full field capacity, and then and wilting point is where the point of no return, where you don't want to get. So let's say I'm not happy with this going down to 69% on Thursday. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this irrigation event and push it up one day, and then let Manna calculate how much it's going to be. So it's a little over half an inch to bring it back to field capacity.
So may I ask a question? When you do that, are you looking at the from above down, the rooting zone depth? Like, are you changing the rooting zone as the crop grows along?
Yes, absolutely.
That's dynamic, very interesting.
So this model here that you're showing us, this is both. It's got the automated Manna software that's building this prediction irrigation like schedule, and then you can go in and physically manually change it too, as well, right? So there's definitely user interface capabilities, so that, like you said, if you're not happy with that hitting below your, say below 70% or whatever, then you can manually adjust it to keep your water levels where it just give you that peace of mind. So it's very intuitive.
Exactly. And what's recommended is to give the system maybe a predefined routine. I run this pivot every 3 days, and then you have at the beginning of the season, it will drop a irrigation event every 3 days, but then look ahead, and it shows you like the next 2 weeks, and this is based on forecast of weather, but also forecast of your vegetation levels of the crop, and see how to plan the next few days, right? There's something missing here, obviously. Let's put an irrigation here. And then you have a good planning for the next week, 10 days, 14 days.
Maybe you can answer the question you will later about how you compare this to, have you compared it to actually what's in the soil? Have you done any type of analytics that say in that pixel, right? If the pixel's 10 meter by 10 meter, my soil moisture was this and my schedule was this. I'm interested to, and of course it's measured over that area. You have to pick the soil generally in that 10 meter by 10 meter area, if that's the size of the pixel, to get a value to compare your irrigation model to what's actually in the soil.
Yeah. Well, let me just talk about it shortly, but we did a very complicated experiment in which we compared the calculated or measured evapotranspiration, crop evapotranspiration, calculated by Manna, to the measured evapotranspiration in the field. Now, to measure evapotranspiration, you need a very sophisticated device called flux tower.
Yeah.
It's not available for growers. It's a research and scientific equipment, but we did that in 5 or 6 locations in the US over corn, alfalfa, and soy. And we compared what the Manna model calculated is the crop evapotranspiration to the actual evapotranspiration measured in the field. And we got to very, very high correlation.
Good.
Yes, very tight correlation. So we were very happy, and we have a full scientific report on this experiment that we can share with anyone who's interested in the technology.
I just asked because of being a science guy, so I know you would, but thank you.
Yeah. Let's do a quick run on this, the second functionality I wanted to show you, and then we'll maybe speak about some other things.
Okay.
As I mentioned, we use satellite data or satellite imagery in order to calculate the crop coefficient, the crop cover, and from there the water demand and all that. But this is a lot of data crunching. Since we already have those images, we might as well show them to the growers because there's a lot of information in them. Now, this is not unique maybe for Manna. These are NDVI or vegetation maps. You can see them in maybe not many, but in quite a few other ag tech solutions. They show the level or density of vegetation. What's nice here, I think, is the way it is being put together and easily shown to you as a user. You don't need to do anything, and every new image that we get for your field will be shown here, will be dropped into your account. You see the coverage is every 3, 4, 5 days you have a new image, and you can go back in time and see even images from 3 years ago. Okay. Very shortly, I'm gonna show you like just maybe 2 interesting things here, but there's much more in here. Let's start from the right-hand side, actually. Right-hand side shows the variability in vegetation density. So yellow, light green, thinner, less developed vegetation. Dark green, more vigorous vegetation, more leaves, more biomass. Okay. You would expect those lines in between the blocks, but if you've noticed this thing, look at this. This is interesting. This is interesting point. You could very easily miss it just by scouting around the field. So this would show you, hey, there's something going on here. You can use your mobile app, by the way, to navigate to this exact location and take a look. It could be crop protection issue, it could be irrigation, it could be some problem in the soil or or anything that affects the vegetation. But it gives you a warning. Now you can take actions and save maybe potential yield loss.
Yeah, I mean these satellite-based scouting apps, and this isn't necessarily a scouting app, but it does offer that same level of just visibility on the entire fields. And when that first kind of came out, a couple of years ago, and some different companies were offering it, it was amazing what you could identify in season. And sometimes you're right, you can walk right out to that spot and find, oh, I've got this issue that I wasn't aware of, or growers that have farmed the same ground for a number of years. I mean, they know the spots in their fields that are good and the spots in the field that are poor. And when you have access to something like this, it just gives you another peace of mind that, all right, I know this is my highest producing area of this field. If I see something that looks a little bit wonky here, I know I need to go out and pay attention to it. So, I mean, whether that's an irrigation issue, a pest issue, weed issue, or something else, the additional visibility is, immeasurably valuable.
Yep, absolutely. And when we talk about irrigation, let's look at the map on the left-hand side. This is a different scale and different colors, as you see, but this shows you the variability in plant water potential. Meaning dark blue will be plants with more water in them. Red, orange, yellow plants are drier. It doesn't mean they're stressed. It doesn't mean that they're dead. It's just variability. Now, it just appears to be that plants with a lot of water in them reflect light in a different way that can be measured. And that's what our algorithms use in order to paint this map. Now, this can show you a lot of things about irrigation or water distribution, uniformity of the irrigation problems, or sometimes water uptake problems. Maybe you're irrigating fine, but you have a spot of salty soil or different soil type or drainage issues. You would see that in those maps. Again, very important intelligence or information for growers.
But what satellite are you using, and kind of the resolution? It would be a couple of questions, I guess, would be interesting to know.
Sure. So we currently use 3 different constellations or 3 different satellites. The first one and the most common, most frequent is Sentinel by the European Space Agency. It provides a imagery, multispectral imagery in 10 meters per pixel resolution. That's about 30 feet. The second, and the revisit time of every 5 days. That's the Sentinel. Okay, it can take image of every field, any field in the world, every 5 days.
Nice.
And then we have Landsat, NASA satellite, that is a little lower frequency of every 16 days and 30 meters per pixel. And the third one is our high resolution service, and that is Spot by Airbus. Airbus, the airplane manufacturer, they also have aerospace activity, very significant one. So this is a high resolution satellite that provides imagery of 1.5 meters per pixel, again, about twice per month. So altogether, all 3 together create this COM, or combination of good frequency of coverage of every field, and the data that they provide can or allows us to do those calculations.
And so then the future you have up to now. So what do you do when you make your prediction into the future? Use an algorithm to extract out growth and development for water?
Yes. So there's the images actually feed the model with a level of vegetation. Now, the model itself creates a continuous curve of growth. The actual growth curve of this specific field is being created during the season.
Yes.
So it can project it to the next 10 days. Okay,
Yep.
so points like this, like if zone one, look at zone one for example, on the left-hand side, you see there are some spots with higher vegetation, some of less vegetation, but it is all irrigated at the same time with the same infrastructure. So the model creates the curve of this zone and then makes a one value that is used to calculate the evapotranspiration, and from there the recommendation for this zone.
That's very innovative. Combining different data sources, very innovative.
Yeah, it's for anybody that's listening and not watching, I would recommend taking a look at this video and just seeing this walkthrough, because the website looks very intuitive. It does not look like it takes it doesn't take a scientist to figure this out. I mean, you can any grower can log on and see some really valuable information about their fields and start making decisions kind of very, very, very quickly. And again, with the new partnership with Pessl Instruments and the integration of the Metos weather stations into this, kind of what each of us are bringing to the table is just two products that are working in conjunction to give you the most accurate irrigation schedule probably that you could get available out there with different resources. So I would love to continue going through this, but in the effort of trying to conserve some time, I think Hovav, did you have anything else on the platform? Or
no, I just as you said, Derek, I cannot stress enough the importance of good data, of weather or local weather data for your specific field. Definitely, when we talk about evapotranspiration and rain is a very local phenomena, very hard to predict and to even measure. There could be rain going through the valley, and one field will get some, and the other field will get none.
Yep.
And so the importance of the weather data that is provided by the field climate or the Metos solutions is vital for accuracy of irrigation decisions. And we in Manna obviously realize that and make the effort to connect the platforms and serve the best decisions we can make.
Absolutely, and it's very a very impressive tool. Guy, I was actually just looking. It's crazy. It's been 6 months since the first time you were on the show, and since we talked, and just a kind of a quick recap of that first episode. We've talked about the irrigation and the tie-ins. Some of the additional, could you just give me a minute on some of the work planning, disease modeling tools, some of the other things that a Pessl station would do, to just further increase the value on these fields?
Yeah, sure. It's all about the holistic tool set, right? A grower's got so many problems going on in the field, and by having these type of stations as part of the picture, you can do multiple things with them throughout the growing season. We're talking irrigation here, which is critical for yield and quality of a crop, but weather stations, or what I call IoT devices in a field, can provide localized rainfall, as we're talking about. So we could have a localized rain buckets in fields. You could have over 1,000-acre field in my area, a couple rain buckets, so that you knew your variability. With that, you can collect temperature and humidity and leaf wetness, and you can run disease models. We all know that if you're going to irrigate, you can create a microclimate under irrigation in a situation which can propagate more of the disease development. So you need to be able to, how's my disease pressure for fusarium development, for example, or scab or sclerotinia. So you need to know that. There's a whole workforce planning side to this too. Like, are my fields accessible? Have I had too much moisture? Can I do my tillage operations? What are my seeding conditions like, right? Can I seed properly? And then it goes into the spraying. So spraying, we know, happens many times in a year, depending upon the type of crop. If I'm going to spray, well, I need to know my local delta T calculation for that. So as you can see what I'm talking about here, the devices aren't one use only. There are multiple uses throughout the entire growing season where they're applied and used for a particular problem, and you can use it for other problems. So that's what's the power of IoT or digital agriculture or Internet of Things agriculture. You can see in the future management now over multiple issues throughout the year, adjusting and fine-tuning your plan for your fields, which I call risk reduction. So you're not going to eliminate risk, but you're going to manage the risk a lot more fine-tuned, and you're shaving off percentages of risk. You return a higher return on investment. That's what you do with all of these tools in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And, you use the term a holistic approach in this, and I use that a lot too. And just for marketing with Metos USA is, it has to be all encompassing. It has to be something that's, looking at, a multiple sets of tools out in the field, whether that's leaf wetness, whether that's full weather station, whether that's satellite imagery that is helping to get a bigger picture of the entire field, from an irrigation standpoint, and help you to identify parts out there that need help. It all goes back to having the best tools in your toolbox to make the right decision to as effectively make more money and be more efficient with the dollars that you're spending. So,
absolutely,
just to kind of wrap up and really kind of drive home the importance, I think, of this particular topic. We spent most of this show talking about irrigation and some advances in it, but just in the U.S. alone, we're talking roughly 60 million acres, about 8% of the U.S. cropland is irrigated. And, according to the USDA, that I think there's almost 30% of the harvested crops comes from that 8% of irrigated crop. Within there, we're talking, almost 90 million acre feet of water that's being used. So it's currently, according to the USDA, between 80 and 90% of U.S. United States freshwater use goes to agriculture. You break it out into the world, and irrigated around the world, irrigated acres is roughly about 20%, like you said, and from that 20% comes 40% of the worldwide crop for consumption. So there's not there's an increase in the need to in the need for irrigation. There's an increase in the need for irrigation efficiencies, and as the shift in the weather that's happening all over the world, and our climate gets more challenging to manage year over year, and our weather seems to get more extreme. We've seen cases of more extreme droughts. You see what's happening in California, where a severe drought mixed with an ill-timed firework caused, almost, the effects of that fire are seen across the nation. It was hazy, misty, foggy. The air quality index for the entire country has been poor. You see, in the Midwest, these violent storms coming rip through and just leveling 10 million acres of cropland. So there's not really a debate that the weather is getting, at the very least, the weather is getting more extreme throughout the country, and it's becoming difficult or throughout the world, and it's becoming more difficult to manage. So from, Hovav, I'll let you go first, but, from your perspective, and then Guy, kind of, your agrometeorological opinions on it, what is the importance of this going forward? What are some challenges and some unique things that we can look forward to, to help us to navigate these uncertain waters, is, no pun intended.
Yeah, no, I 100% I agree with you. Is the weather, is the world getting hotter or not? I don't know. But we do know that it gets crazier every year, right? As you mentioned, and that affects our ability to grow crops or grow food, right? Now the effect of it on water. Look, the water quantity on Earth is always the same. It's a closed system. It's not that there's less or there will be less water on Earth. That's physically impossible. But when we say that water will be more scarce or more hard to get, is what we actually mean is that it means that our access to this resource will become harder and harder in some, if not most, the most productive agricultural areas in the world. Fresh water, as you mentioned, maybe in the US is 80-90%. I think globally it's about 70% used for agriculture. But people and industry also need this resource, and
Absolutely.
we all know that we will need more food to support the growing human population. That's not a debate. And this population will need a place to live on Earth, so there's less land to cultivate. It will be harder to get access to water. All of this together presents a challenge, a problem. Look, I really believe that all of us in this industry, growers, food companies, the input companies, the huge corporates that we all know, the agtech companies, we all have a role or a job in solving these problems. With all due respect, I don't know, the broker in New York will not solve it. But
No.
we have it's in our hands. So with that in mind, using technology to better understand and predict the weather, using technology to make sense of this data and help us decide better, and then using technology to apply water and other inputs as well in the most precise way or the most efficient way. I think it's one, at least potential way of improving, as you mentioned, the crop drop, and make it a more reasonable future.
Absolutely.
For us.
Well said.
Anything to add to that, Guy?
Yeah, that was very well said. I mean, we all know that weather is variable, and that's the part that's hard to predict, right? Change you can plan for. If you know you're going from point A to point B, you can plan, but it's the variability that kills you. So I always remember as a kid, having a 1 inch or 2 inch rainfall. Now I can see 4 to 8 inch rainfalls in storms. That didn't happen when I was young. So there's no doubt. But how do you plan for that as a farmer? How is your system able to handle now 4 or 8 inches of water if it falls out of a rain event? That's what I was telling you. We have too much water at times, right? So we have to be able to move that off the land. As much as in areas that now have hotter and drier temperatures, as you said, it's a closed loop. We need to be able to manage the water so that we can grow the crop, right? We don't have more water stored in an aquifer. It's there, it's finite, and an input to that aquifer occurs because of inputs from rain or rivers or so forth. So we have to manage all this properly, one as for agriculture, and two for domestic use, and we got to do it properly. So this is where IoT tools come in. IoT tools allow us to control and manage risk more effectively over the entire growing season and manage these things exactly as to what's required. Not too much, not too little. Let's get right in the sweet spot so that we get the right amount of crop per each drop of water, as Derek said. So, yep, I see in the next while in my career the absolute explosion of IoT tools, digital tools on farm, providing far better risk reduction and management than we have done in the past. And I'll sum it up with that.
Excellent. Well, Hovav, Guy, this has been a wealth of amazing information. I want to thank both of you for taking the time here today to get this done. And I will go ahead and post these here. Everything coming up probably at the end of the week, and anybody that's listening, I'll have access to the video if you want to hop on and see Hovav's live demonstration. We'll have links to all the different websites. Anybody that anybody in the U.S. that's interested in learning a little bit more about this partnership and what some of these tools can do on your farm, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to anybody on my team. www.metosusa.com. Hovav, I'll supply the Manna Irrigation. What is it? Just mannairrigation.com, or what is Manna website?
Yeah, it's manna-irrigation.com.
Manna-irrigation.com. I'll have all these links posted. Anybody up north in Canada, reach out to Guy. We can Guy can help facilitate some of these conversations as well. But these are some truly unique and truly impressive tools to help they're created with the grower in mind, to help make your lives easier, to help make your decision-making process easier, so that you can focus on other parts or other aspects of your farm. So, guys, with that, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thanks, Guy. And thanks for this partnership and joint effort. And happy harvesting.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.